What's up, everybody? Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to let you know about an amazing offer we have at the Coaches site. We are going to provide 10 youth associations, the first 10 that reach out to us, a 45-day free trial on the Coaches site. That means that every coach in your organization is going to get full access to our suite of premium coaching content for 45 days, as long as there's a minimum of 20 coaches. We'll even throw in a usage report at the end so you can evaluate if it's the right fit for your organization, your coaches, and most of all, your players. If you're interested, okay, be one of the first 10 associations to reach out to us by shooting us an email at info@thecoachesite.com and put 45-day free trial in the subject line. Again, that's info@thecoachesite.com and put 45-day free trial in the subject line, and we'll get your association rolling right away. And now, on to the show. What time do you normally get to the rink in the morning?
When I was playing, I was probably one of the first ones, to be honest, and one of the last ones, which I attribute to a lot of the success in the career. I was a rink rat. Even my last year, I was dropped the kids off at school, head right to the rink. But now depends on I'm driving around, right? So sometimes it's 20 minutes, depending on the traffic, and other times, hopefully, an hour and getting ready if I got 3-4 skates. But definitely enjoyed being at the rink, which has been obviously huge for me, not only in my playing career, but even now coaching. It makes up for all the time on the road when I get to go out there and teach and do what I love to do.
So I'm curious. So I've been, maybe not quite to the extent or schedule that you're at, but I've been in that skill development game where you're ripping around the city, in my case, Vancouver. And one ice time you might be working with, 9 and 10-year-olds, and the next one you might be on the ice with U18 or junior players. How do you keep track of the various practice or lesson plans, over the course of a day and what you're going to be diving into?
I'm glad we're not doing this podcast a year ago because
Okay.
it would have been totally different. Fresh out of retirement, and there's nothing wrong with it, writing everything down by hand. And I had drills that were made up based off of shifts I watched in the NHL that I could just, okay, this is the Kucherov neutral zone entry, whatever. And I just write that down. But then now that, I'm trying to be a lot more professional about it. I have it in Coach Stem. I can go back. I download them all also. So I can go back and say, okay, yeah, that's what I did a year ago. Or, to start the year in August, this is what we worked on. And then we're trying to build progressions, whether it's in my own business where we're doing our own private skates with the pros in the summer and junior players, or even now when I'm working with like school programs or development programs, AAA teams that I'm going to see. I see them once a week. I don't want to be, and there's nothing wrong with doing the same drill back to back. You can add, tons of progressions. You can get really creative, but we're trying to progress them where we're working on different skills every time because they don't get to see me very often, whereas they're doing maybe 3 to 4 practices or games a week with their coaches. So for sure, that was a huge help. But I would say the biggest thing was learning how in a single day like that to make, let's say, 2 plans, but then being adaptable enough that I could tailor it in levels. And then depending if, kids are having a bad day, they're not listening, can you, especially the younger groups, can you adjust it to make it maybe a bit more fun or get them engaged? You don't want to lose them. And I don't want to be the guy who's yelling on the ice or saying I'm taking pucks away. Like the whole point of me being there is they're hiring us to help them develop. So my punishment is usually I just stick their nose in the boards and we do rim pickups and like, like small area breakouts. That's when I'll flip the practice around. But so it's not the worst punishment, but obviously, shooting pucks and doing zone entry stuff is funner. But definitely a year ago, I would say looking back, I was getting by pretty much by just
Yeah.
writing stuff down and watching clips. But now I could say that it's a lot more structured where I'm putting stuff together. Like when I go to Armada and they're like, hey, you have the junior team here in the queue and they're, hey, you got 3 drills, you got the first 45 minutes. Like I'm, color coordinating everything, making sure the coaches know what we're doing, maybe even bringing clips in to show, hey, this is why we're doing this. Here's an example. Whereas before it was more me just saying, hey, trust me, I saw this last night in the shift and this is what we're calling the drill. So I'm sure it was a little bit the same for you from one year to the next.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think you touched on something really important. Whereas, oftentimes you're probably getting these kids coming from school. They've had a long day. They may have already been on the ice already, and that ability to sort of get them engaged is, I think, an art form in itself. Do you have any tips, perhaps drills, to say, hey, in those first 10 minutes, here's how you can get the kids' attention and get them on track quickly.
Yeah, I think obviously it's easier with the older kids or
For
let's say
sure.
when they get to a level where they know in a way, either they're being told or they feel it that they are elite or they have a chance of getting somewhere where there's like that it kind of switches right away the mentality where you could let them literally start to practice any way you wanted and they'd be ready to go. And then there's other ones, whether they're less elite, less engaged, maybe even we see it sometimes now, even on like on ped days, if kids are going to bed later or they have no structure in the morning and they're showing up at 11 for a skate on a ped day, like the attitude, the atmosphere might be different and they're a little bit more chaotic.
Yeah.
So what we'll do then is we'll have them do a lot of like activation drills through the neutral zone, where it's a lot of like nervous system, a lot of using the eyes a lot. So we might have like four guys in the middle with tools, but we're telling them the tools are not made for you to like toe drag and flip pucks over. They're just kind of to be in your way, and then you got three other guys skating around with you, and then we'll have four nets. Whether we have four goalies or none, it doesn't really matter. If we have none, then we'll just use the two nets, and then on the whistle, two of them will go each their separate way on both sides, and then like
Yeah.
four players will come in, and now they're running into each other. They're losing pucks, and now it's like, okay, well, why are you running? Are you going too fast? Like, slow it down. What are you looking for? I saw you lose the puck. It's because you toe dragged 8 times in a row. That's you didn't care about the drill. You just wanted to like kind of work on your like things like that where you get them in and they're touching pucks, and they like it. So, but then you see it right away, and you can do a lot of corrections through that as well. So that's a good one that we've worked on, or starting them with three pucks and maybe throwing in a fourth. Now they got to get rid of one of them, so now they're activating a lot. Their sensory is overloading, and then you can calm them down a little bit and teach.
Love that. Love that. And so, we talked about, you came out and did a presentation at TCS Live in Ann Arbor back in June. And for anybody that hasn't seen that presentation or didn't take it in live, I think one thing that really stood out to me was just starting very much with, very fundamental and basic progressions, and really isolating, I wouldn't say skills as much, but very specific mechanics within the skill. And you could just see that building block process unfold. Who first introduced you to maybe the details within the skills and just how important it was to master each of those little components?
It's a great question because when I was playing, I didn't really get a lot of that, right? You're older, you're in the pro system. If you're not in the NHL or these high end teams, maybe you don't have a development coach or a skills coach. So your coaches are having to do a lot of this stuff, and maybe they're just expecting you to do it on your own. So a huge help for me definitely was working with Hockey Canada, getting the certifications, not only just the document, but just seeing what other people did, meeting some of the best, development coaches. Corey McNabb's been there forever at Hockey Canada, does a great job.
He's the best.
Yeah, and so like, and he loves hockey, so you talk to him, you could talk all day with him. And that's all you do. If you go on the Hockey Canada app, a lot of it is progressions and even with the older players, when I was starting to do the pros, I was kind of lost of like, okay, I have a lot of good drills, I have a lot of good ideas, a lot of good clips on the iPad. I work a lot at night, making sure I have good content to bring them and show them, showcase like, hey, this is why we're doing it. But like to actually build a practice plan, I realize even for them, they're making mistakes that I'm correcting my, U11, U13 players, and you're expecting
Yeah.
guys to do it, but they're 31 years old with bad habits. And is the reason that player is not in the NHL and but is dominating the American League, or is there a reason that that guy's playing in Europe now when his whole life people thought he'd be a first round NHL pick. So building these progressions actually, I think it showcases even to the older guys, like, oh wow, like I need to work on this. And this is like very basic stuff.
Well, it's interesting. Have you seen the money? Or sorry, have you seen the movie Moneyball?
Yeah.
So Jonah Hill's character, Paul DePodesta, He just got hired as the president of baseball operations for the Colorado Rockies,
Okay.
and his career trajectory. So, as in the movie, kind of he's fresh out of Yale, goes to work with Billy Beane and the Athletics. From there, he goes to the Washington Nationals, and then he goes and spends 10 years in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns. As their director of football strategy. Now he's back in baseball. And there was this really interesting article that came out. And it said that in the 10 years that he's been out of Major League Baseball, like the sports science and the details and the technical aspects of coaching has evolved so much. There was a lot of people questioning if, the knowledge that he had from 10 years ago was even going to translate. And they just said it might take him so long to catch up. But just from everything from like the release point of pitchers, like we've gotten so granular in the game that, if you don't have those details, regardless of how much talent you have, you're going to sink. And I sense that while we might not be quite there in hockey yet, we're on our way to that level where if you don't have the details in your game, the game's just so fast that the players that really lean into those small mechanics are just inherently going to have an edge.
100% agree. I mean, I see it, and I'm sure even like coaching you and I and just a little basic stuff, and then you go, let's say you had a skate right after with AHL, NHL guys, you'd be able to correct a lot of them the same way based off of bad habits that maybe people have let them get away with, or maybe there's guys that I have that I didn't even notice because I mean, let's be honest, I used to skate with these guys as a player. A lot of them are now skating with me as their coach. Um, Guys getting away with bad sticks because they can overcome with their feet. You look at a guy like Lane Hutz.
Totally, yeah.
Is he the most sound defensively? No, but like go watch one of his games when he gets beat or he's in the wrong position and how he's able to track back or a reattack with a good angle because he's making up for it. But like we're not going to teach that way because not everyone can make up for that mistake or that bad pinch or bad read or bad stick. So we're going to go back to the fundamentals, and then from there, yeah, if you have the creativity or the foot speed or whatever to be able to do it and add your own flavor to it, that's fine. We can't really take that away from you, but we're not going to go from that point and be like, "Oh, well, you can make up for it. So here are things that you can work on in practice." We're going to treat the 30-year-old the same way I treat the 11-year-old when I'm teaching angling. Is basically I hear myself and I am annoying myself because I'm saying the same thing all day, right? Like, but it's a fact.
Well, I'm curious, man. Like, just again, and I think it's remarkable. I don't know if brand's the right word, but I mean, you've built up quite a following, both I sense in Montreal, but also just sort of online and in the hockey community. You've only been at this, I think you said it. This is kind of we're a year and a half in, but do you sense that there's a benefit to working with the kids and maybe how that influences how you work with the older players? And what I mean by that is, and this is just from my own experience, like I coached junior hockey and then went to UBC coaching university hockey, and then after stepping away from that, kind of got involved with youth hockey. And what I discovered is that, um, if just in reflecting, is that there was probably lots of times working with like older university, ex-CHL players where I would have maybe seen something would have been like, it's so basic. If I bring that up to them, like I might lose credibility because I'm like, what are you talking about? But then the opportunity to go work with kids and see instantaneously, like they get their hands away from their body or they get a wider base with their skate or how they lean. And you see the instant improvement that it kind of gave me confidence as a coach to go back to, when I go back to junior hockey, like I just felt like my toolbox was so much better. And I don't know if I would have got that unless I had to just, gone and worked with kids. And I encourage so many coaches now that are starting out. I'm like, man, if you like go volunteer at a hockey school, go work with somebody reputable. And like those reps are so important.
Yeah, I agree. I think working with the younger kids has probably been the best way for me to learn how to coach for sure, even like the pro players, like you're saying. And now, for sure, when you're starting out, I had the luxury of playing for a long time and then having the trust of those players that maybe saw me in this or you saw how my mind worked and how I'm so invested. I loved it. As soon as I retired, I started clipping video, or even before, like when I started my Instagram, I was still playing in January and I was already clipping every night, trying to get ready for, May, June, July for when I was going to start having skates. Well, having those players around, like sometimes I didn't, like I said before, I didn't really notice certain things. and I was nervous even at times to bring up certain things like you're saying, where it's so basic, like an angling drill with a good stick, where
Yeah,
like, all right, well, this guy
totally.
doesn't care. Like, is this $5 million guy on a Wednesday at 10 a.m. in July doesn't really want to be doing my angling drill to making sure he's got a blade on the proper side when he's, things like that. But then you go to the younger groups and then you're starting to see, okay, there's a deficiency, and then you're watching the older guys. You're saying, well, I need to correct them because they're not doing it well, and our job is to help them in the way, right? I'm not their buddy when I'm on the ice. I'm there to coach them and make them better. And can I make you better? Can I keep you the same? Maybe prolong your career. Guys that are maybe playing in Europe that just want to keep that level as long as possible and kind of do what I did, where once I cut the cord on the NHL. I just said, all right, okay, I need to be the best Swiss defenseman for the next 10 years because that's how I'm going to stay in this league. And I had to keep that level. That's our job. So yeah, 100% we're going to do angling drills with sticks on the ice because that's something you need to work on and you don't do it properly. So we're going to work on it for sure. And now I don't have the nervousness anymore because I think guys, well, you need to earn that trust, but also this is a huge thing for coaches. If you have the opportunity to not only watch, videos like on the coach's side and learn, but also maybe clip yourself and have video available to show players, it's instant buy-in for, most of the players. Because my biggest line that I tell the older guys is don't argue with me, argue with Makar, argue with Jack Hughes, argue with Kucha. Like these are the guys that are in the video. Like, don't argue with me. I'm showing you guys what they're doing.
Well, I'd be curious. At what age do you start showing clips to kids?
No, I did it this morning. I did 11-year-olds. 10
Unreal.
year, like U11. We went out there, we did shooting drill. I wanted them to like pull around the cone or a tool a certain way. They weren't doing it. They were pulling forward. So everything's going high in the glass. Like I call it a hard saucer pass. So then I let the
Yeah.
drill run, and while the drill's running, I'll grab the iPad, and most of the times I'll remember, okay, yeah, I have that one clip. It's in this folder. Boom, I pull it out and show them 2, 3 clips right away. I make sure that another good lesson. Make sure if you don't have them downloaded, there's good Wi-Fi, or else you're screwed. But I'm about ready, and then it's like, oh, that's what we're doing. It's, yeah, well, McDavid doesn't just skate through the neutral zone and then go put it in the net. Like he has to shoot through triangles. It's to shoot off the rush. Like here's a clip. And then they're like, oh, okay. And then they want to go back and do the drill. Then you can add progressions to that. So for sure, right away, I wouldn't do it with my son. He's a U7 or like MAG program. But, I think if you have anything, and even for the older guys, they have a question. Hey, here's the clip. Like, watch it.
When you were playing, was there any players that you maybe paid special attention to, or that, perhaps even today, is there players that you kind of just if they're playing, you're like, hey, I'm going to watch this game and try and pick a few things
Yeah,
out?
for sure. I mean, I like to talk more about now because I think I watch way more hockey now. I was one of those guys that when I played, I basically studied a lot of myself. I was hard on myself. I watched my own clips. Then I would ask coaches, "Hey, can we do video?" I'd ask for them for their input, and then kind of put everything together and hope. I wasn't always agreeing with them, but I always wanted to know and tried to put it together. Once I was old, and I think with family and hockey, sometimes guys don't have time to, watch every night or every goal or whatever. I think now the younger generation is kind of more like that, where they're watching hockey at night or they're watching. But even then, are they watching hockey or are they watching every goal the next morning? That's a big question too. Are they just going on the app and watching the highlights? That for me is not watching the game, but that's a whole nother conversation. So now I try to the main thing when I clip is I'm trying to find a player that I could teach with. So a Cale Makar I could teach with, because as dynamic as he has a lot of fundamentals that you could teach younger players. And then can I match that with like Quinn Hughes, who's more dynamic, doing a lot of spinoramas in the neutral zone, harder to teach because he's more read and react. And then can I bring that, and then depending on what D's you're working with, you can maybe show them a little bit of both. Or same thing with the forwards. You don't want the cookie cutter. Here's what these guys are doing. This is how you got to do it.
Can we use Cale Makar is an example because I think, you talk about those fundamentals, and gosh, it's so easy to watch those players and just get hypnotized by, the super high end elite skill that you lose sight of, like the building blocks that enable those types of plays. Can you give examples of things that you might pull out of Cale's game?
Yeah, for example, when he's going back for a puck, let's go to the really boring stuff for the Ds. But when
Yeah,
they're going back for breakouts, the amount of times if you watch like a good breakout of his that he's scanning, taking in information, he wants to know the distance of the F1, what angle is he taking, how fast is he coming, can I get to the net? If I can't get to the net, like can I sell it and then like create space? Like there's all these things are going through his head, but let's remember probably a 6'3", 210-pound forechecker. So this is what we got to teach our Ds because it's easy for me to break it down on video. Or for you,
sure. Yeah,
do it on the ice, it's a lot different. So that's like one really good example is, well, yeah, I know you don't want to do like shoulder checking drills and like smaller breakouts, but there's a reason this guy's breaking it out at such a high rate and tape to tape where he doesn't have to play in his end. Why aren't we doing that? Or, offensively, when he's on the blue line, we see all this dynamic work, how he ends up a lot. He's probably one of the Ds that ends up the most at the top of the circles with pucks, like coming in on angles and shooting pucks and from there. Well, rewind the tape. How is he getting there? Well, he knows he wants to get there. So how is he moving the forward stick or to make him toe caps go into the inside and then he could stop and what legs he pushing on? He's very calculated. Where if you watch like a Quinn Hughes, I have tons of clips where like even me know watching the tons of clips, I have no idea if I didn't watch the game what I'm expecting a spinorama here or whatever because he's more dynamic the way he is. And I'm not saying Makar isn't, but Makar, I find it's easier to teach for the younger defensemen. As crazy as that sounds.
got it. No, I think that makes sense. How you describe it, that makes sense. You touch on some of those details, like for example, scanning, and I worry sometimes that those are leaving our game a little bit because it seems like oftentimes we're coaching to appease the parents in the stands, so it's got to look good for them, or we're appeasing to ensure that we got good content to put on Instagram and get a few likes and maybe push those boundaries. But when it comes to teaching more of those fundamentals, how do you sell, like whether it's younger kids or older kids, how do you sell kids on, and again, we'll use your presentation at TCS Live as an example. It's like, hey, we're just going to catch pucks, we're going to get our feet around it, and then we're going to go and take a shot, and then we're going to catch a puck, get our feet around it, and then go in.
I mean, it is hard to sell it with I find it's harder to sell it with the paying parent who's coming to the practice and watching because it's very basic stuff and they don't have like, I mean, even in Montreal, we have tons of skills coaches that are good because they're developing certain skills, but their players are becoming overly skilled in a certain, at the game, and then they're not working on anything else. So yeah, you look great in my flow drill or in my warm up drill at the beginning, but if I've never seen the kid, I might say like, "Wow, this kid's really good." And then 25 minutes into practice, he's getting dominated by the other kids on the ice because he doesn't know how to put it together. So
Yeah,
that's the way I sell it to the parents is to say like, okay, do you want your kid to be the best M13 player where there's less or U13 where there's no contact, where he can fly around and he's beating players just based off space and speed, right? Because he doesn't have to make a decision. He's just
yeah,
blowing. We've all seen these players, they're just blowing by everybody or they're bigger at that age? Or do you want your kid to be good when the time is right, when he's 16, 17, 18, when it's really, really gonna matter? Well, you gotta start now because if he doesn't learn how to scan now because he doesn't need to, because he's just too good, well, wait till you go meet a Western League defenseman who's 16, who's he can skate and can hit and has great timing. Well, you better learn how to scan, right? So why are we not teaching that at a younger age?
so you mentioned you're a development coach for, I believe it's two U18 AAA programs in Montreal, as well as the local QMJHL team. When you're working with these players, and I would say this is maybe a good phase of the year to ask this question with some of these incoming players, what do you find are some of the skills that maybe are underdeveloped or maybe even missing that you've got to help them acquire to be successful at those levels?
rims, puck protection, everywhere
Real.
you go. I think for the most part, if you're watching NHL games, the amount of times guys have to carry a guy on their hip for a few seconds or roll off a hit and make a play. Um, Same thing with rims, whether it's a rim to yourself or in the zone cycle, guys being able to pick it up and then just quickly punch turn out of that. I find it's such a good skill to work on. We try to do it as often as possible. It's not always the funnest, but it leads to much more goal scoring, or for defensemen, way less time in your end, right? Like a defenseman, yeah, great. You made a really good read from the net front. You cut off a cycle, but the puck blew up off your backhand and it just went back to the half wall where they just kept the puck in. Well, that's a skill. Now, not only do I not want you to rim it back up the wall, I want you to pick it up on your backhand and have poise and then hit in between those two offensive players and maybe tag a low winger. And now we're out of the zone with full possession. Well, that started with your read and your rim pickup, not with your skill after. But the players
Yeah.
want that step, right? So those two things are huge for me. We do a lot, like this morning, our warm up drill was puck protection. We try to do it in a fun way because you got it. You have to. You have
Yeah.
to. But there are ways to do it. You could be really creative. But I think again, bringing clips in, a lot of forwards on the ice this morning, Draisaitl off the rush or Barkov off the rush. Like, you guys don't want to be like these guys, or is that not something we should work on? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's do that. Well, great. So that's kind of how I try to sell it.
You know what? It's so true, and great example. Gosh, it would have been last week. I was down watching the pregame skate with the Canucks in Dallas, and the Canucks come on the ice, and there's Connor Garland, and I think he was working with Tyler Myers, and he's got like a pile of pucks. Like he's probably got 20 pucks against the wall, and nobody's even rimming him to him, but he's just turning facing the wall, pulling a puck out, getting his toes up ice, tape to tape pass, 20 times, moves the pile of pucks, backhand to his forehand. And and I think such a good reminder for coaches, right? That just getting those touches in, those the feel for the puck is so important for setting players up. And I sense that the best players in the world get that just getting those touches in early is so important. So in getting ready for this conversation, Max, I did some digging, and on um, your LinkedIn page, you've got this quote from Albert Einstein, and it says, "Wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it." I'm going to guess not a lot of hockey players have that, on their LinkedIn page or any of their social channels, but it really caught my attention. And then following that, you were an interesting case study because a lot of the coaches that you played for, we have a relationship with. So like I reached out to Ricard Gronberg, I reached out to
Oh
Dave
yeah,
King, I
right.
reached out to Luke Strand and Troy Ward and John Guyans. And, universally they all spoke to, your ability as a player, and they would have had you at different stages in your career, but it was universal that, the responsibility that you took for your own game and being first on the ice and being just really proactive in your own development. And I didn't get it a sense that it was like, hey, I'm doing this because I want to get on the power play, or I'm trying to make more money in the game. My sense was that this is just maybe a bit of the way that you're wired, is just to improve and challenge yourself. Maybe go back to the beginning. Like where do you think that you got that mindset or that DNA?
Easy answer: failure, getting cut, not being good enough, being the underdog. I mean, it goes on and on. That's why now sometimes my first year it was hard for me to listen to some of these kids who, or parents even, that had dominant kids at 13, 14, 15, and just say, "Hey, my kid's super elite," or another parent, "Yeah, my kid, like, he's not that good." It's such a process. Like, I don't think, if you haven't been around the game, whether you played or not, but if you haven't been around, like, the high-end coaches or in meet and greets and talking, you don't understand just how much time and effort goes into it. And then in 5, 10 years, the game might be different. So have you evolved at that time too?
Yeah.
You see these high end guys where they're adding things to their game. We talk about the Crosbys, everything, and I tried to never be like that narrow minded to say like, okay, I'm good now. And it was always a process for me, and now I try to bring that onto the players. And I see a lot of sadly wasted potential just based off of that, right? Players that are mediocre that could be excellent, or good players that could be, some of the most elite players maybe in the country, because of small things that maybe they don't want to work on. They're disinterested. Whereas for me, it was getting cut early on and not being good enough. And the first year I was actually really a standout, and if you want to even call it that, was the year I played for John Goyen's midget triple, because I got cut from midget AAA the year before, and then I didn't get drafted to junior my first year. So I was a second year player in midget undrafted, and nobody really expected anything. John started playing the hell out of me and trusted me, and I kind of ran with it. And next thing you knew, I was second in the league behind Chris Letang in D scoring. And now everyone's talking about me, and they're like, where'd this guy come from? And in my head, I'm like, I've been here the whole time. It's just no one noticed or cared because I wasn't a big name. And then I carried that through my career. If you look at it, my first year pro, they sent me down to the East Coast for 2 games. And not that I was too good for that or I was above that. It was more the mentality that like, this, I got better. I got better than this. I'm gonna show I got better than this. So I went back, played in the American League, then finally get an NHL chance. Then same thing, go to Europe, play. Most imports go there. They play what, 2-3 years in a country, and then it's like slowly you see they're downgrading countries every year, and then they retire. Or my mentality was like, no, I'm in Switzerland for the next 10 to 12 years because I'm gonna have that mentality. And I always said, someone's coming for your job, and they did. There were years where I led the league in D scoring, and the next year they'd sign a Swedish D man power play guy on the same team. And what am I supposed to do in the summer? Complain, call my agent, ask the coach, what's the GM doing? Or do I put in the work and show up and give this guy no chance to take my job? That was more the mentality that I had.
So, I mean, lots to unpack there, but you said something early on when you talked about like John Goyens and that he trusted you. When perhaps you weren't the most heralded player, or when you make the move to the American League, like how much do you think that the opportunities you created for yourself were a product of building trust with the coach? Because, you were going in there asking to watch video, or they saw you going on the ice first, or they saw you just taking accountability for your own game. And that, when, again, as we know, decisions on who to put on the ice, those happen in a split second. And so much of those are just, it's gut. It's like, and again, and gut is like, who are you going to trust?
Yeah, yeah, I believe in that a lot. I think accountability is a word that we need to incorporate more and teach more. I think that the next generation, now I'm aging myself, but I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe there's a lot less of that. From what we're seeing, and even just the conversations that I hear, if there's a bad pass, it's like, well, what's this guy doing? Why is he on my line? Like, that's a terrible pass. And then my answer is, yeah, but you want to be elite. Like, it was in your skate. That's an easy skate to stick pickup. Yeah, 100%. That should be a better pass. But you coming out here and complaining to him or to other teammates is not really helping anybody. So there's no accountability for that player either for not picking up the puck. It's all about the other guy, or like little things like that, that they add up, and it becomes an unhealthy environment for, development, or even for the team to win. So I believe in that a lot. And at first I wasn't saying much, but now I start to speak up now, and I'm getting more comfortable in my role, and I believe that is part of my job. And yeah, and I'll call guys out. I'll go see them individually. I don't want to do it in front of other guys, but I'll call guys out.
Sure.
Hey, you're better than that. Yeah, but I'm like, there's no buts. I'll go talk to the other guy too and tell him that he needs to make a better pass or put it into an area. But what's your job in this situation? Should we go at the end of practice and work on, skate to stick pickups? Yeah, maybe. Okay, so let's do it. But like, stop complaining about the other guy. Then I think accountability is a big one that I carried around in my career. I was the first guy to say, yeah, like that's horrible. Like that's I can't do that. Like I can't play like that. That's a bad game. Or how'd you play? Not good enough. Okay, but what's not good enough? I don't know. Let's go watch video. Let's get better. I think being accountable is huge. If players are willing to do it at a young age, it's gonna propel them in their career because now they're looking for answers. They're not looking for more problems, right?
Well, I guess with all that being said, I mean, do you think there's value for young players to fall and have to decide if they want to get back up again?
I mean, do you wish it as a parent? Probably not, right? We all have kids and we want the best for them, same in school. So it's hard to say that, but for sure I think there's a benefit to a little bit of suffering, especially early on. Maybe not even if you don't get cut. Like what if you're not the guy or we a lot of conversations in youth hockey now of do you cut the bench? Do you not cut the bench? How much, are you playing one goalie more than the other goalie? Well, these are all conversations that provinces can have or whatever. But for me as a development coach, someone I'm fully invested in just making every kid that comes on the ice when I'm there better, and all the other stuff I don't worry about so much for now. Maybe one day I'll want to get more into that, but it's more about, okay, well, now how do you take that guy's ice time? How are you taking that job away? How are you like what are you going to do about it versus yeah, it's not fair. Yeah, it's true, but that's a good life lesson, I believe, as well.
No, totally. And I think that, as you said, I think being a parent oftentimes makes you a better coach too, because you can understand how easy it is. I think if we all look in the mirror, it's easy to kind of get sucked into that trap a little bit, and you have to be intentional about walking it back and maybe perhaps letting your kids figure these things out for themselves and understanding that it might not be instantaneous. It might take them some time, but if they're motivated, that chances are they will figure it out. I thought another thing that was interesting is that, when we have these conversations, I've got a bit of a routine. So I'll go look up, everybody's elite prospects profile, I'll go on their Wikipedia page, and I'll just start doing my research. And I end up going to YouTube because I might want to look at, other interviews that they've done, be it as a player, a coach, or maybe other podcasts, that sort of thing. So I look you up on YouTube, man, and I'm expecting like we're going to see some, some highlights as a player, and there were certainly some of those. There's a lot of fights too, and I was sort of like surprised. I was like, man, I didn't really anticipate that being part of his game, but my my interpretation of that, I guess, was that this was a player that had to find ways to stand out and to take something from every game. And sometimes that might be making a great play on the power play. Sometimes that might be making a great breakout pass, maybe blocking a shot. But other times it might be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to stand up for a teammate, or I'm going to play this role because I might not get the benefit of the doubt that maybe the first rounder gets on my roster. And I gotta create my own opportunities. Any truth to that?
Yeah, you hit it on the head, like 100%. It was being involved, like not being a first round NHL or even my first year pro, an NHL prospect, to be honest. I was signed to AHL, one way, easily disposable at the end of the year or during the year. It started in junior. I had Stéphane Lebeau played in the NHL, won a cup with the Habs. He was my coach, and Ron Schulz was actually the coach now for the Three Rivers East Coast team. Those two guys together, great, great coaches to have for me in junior. We didn't have a great team, but for me to develop, it was great to have those guys because Ron was, a guy who used to fight and be tough when he played, and I had Stefan played in the NHL, could see the potential. So putting the two together, I actually started fighting in junior like 6, 7 times a year. And not always because of a big hit and someone coming after me. Sometimes it was I was captain and we're down 2-0 and I just slash a guy off the draw and say, hey, like let's go, or do anything like that. And then slowly, and when I got to pro, it became more about what you said. It became more about I got to bring something, or that 7th, 8th defenseman in the stands right now in Houston is going to take my spot. And there was one game in particular, I'll never forget this. I had Kevin Constantine. So anyone who knows him knows how tough of a
I
coach
know Kevin.
he is.
Yeah.
And Kevin and I had our fights. I was probably one of the players that played the longest for him. I played 5 years for this guy. And that's
Yeah,
saying
he brought you over. Did he bring you to Europe? Because you were with him in Houston, and then you made to is Ambrosia. You
Yeah,
guys went together?
Ambry Piotta, yeah, so he was there, he brought me so I owe him a lot, and I think even myself probably taught him a few things even in Europe that he couldn't, do certain things over there that he was doing in North America, like coaching-wise and, how much guys could take and video and everything, but he was huge for my career, and there was a game in Houston where Clayton Stoner, who played a long time in, Western, he was one of my D partners, and I should say I was his D partner at the time for sure, but put it that way. He ended up getting called up, and so Kevin comes to me before the game and he says, "Hey Max, if Stoner wasn't getting called up, like you're out, like you're the 7D, we're scratching you." And I had played like now 10, 15 games in a row, right? And I thought I was playing pretty well. And he just said, and anyone who knows Kevin knows he's pretty dry, and he's like, it's just not enough. Like I'm looking at stats up advanced. He was one of the first guys to do like advanced
Oh,
stats,
yeah.
crazy numbers. Like he'd show me stuff like home and away. I'm like, how do you do all this with like spreadsheets by himself? Right? Like, I don't know. You seem like you know a lot about Kevin, so it's like you know how he is.
Well, no, I mean, we've had it's funny. So, gosh, I think it was our first ever conference. I didn't know Kevin, but I just like called him up, and he was coaching in Everett at the time. And part of it was because I had when I had coached at UBC, Brendan Sawney, who's now an assistant coach with Coachella Valley. Um, and you could tell Sonny was going to be a coach for sure. And so now, like when we were traveling, we was at the airport or on the bus. Like I just have Sonny in my ear the whole time, like Kevin this, Kevin that, Kevin does this, and Everett we did this. Like he was just obsessed with it, and so started doing some deep dives. But man, like we've had, I think, all of his original staff in Everett on the show, and they talk about this is pre sports code. This is pre everything. It's like he's introducing them. He's like, "Do you guys know what Excel is?" And they're like, "No idea what Excel is." They're like, "Well, get used to it because that's where you're going to spend most of your time as a coach." And they're like manually inputting every piece of data. And I think, I don't want to go off on a tangent here. I think there is a 30 for 30 doc to be told about Kevin Constantine's coaching tree. Like Troy Ward coached with him as well, like
Yeah,
Luke Strand. You look at all these guys, like
yeah.
they are just like there is a web of people that have either played or worked under Kevin Constantine. And I think, indirectly he has had a massive influence on our game and just how coaches teach today.
100% I agree. He had a lot of like for sure negative moments in his career or things that he would want back or conversations that he's had. But one thing is no player who ever played for him could ever say this guy was not committed to try to like make his team or players better. I believe that. Conversations I had where we'd have to close the door and people could hear us yelling through the hall in the hallway and saying like, "Man, that's crazy." And I would be like, "Yeah, well, I think he likes it, to be honest with you, because he sees the passion I have for it also, and that's he wants to be around these type of people." And to this day, I never got the chance to ask him like if that was actually true that I was going to get scratched, or it was just a way for him to light a fire in my ass because I didn't believe that, you know, Clayton getting called up was the only reason I was able to get in. I believe another guy would have got scratched anyways if Stoner was playing, but maybe it was a way for him to get me going. So now before the game, the whole time I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm not producing as much offensively as I used to in junior. I'm playing second power play, which we all know in the American League or NHL could be like 20 seconds, depending on, what team you're on. So that clip is actually on YouTube. When I went out, it was like you could see the timestamp. It's probably a couple minutes into the game. I hammered O'Reilly's brother, Cal O'Reilly, at center ice, and clean hit, but like definitely pretty vicious. And then Tristan Grant jumped the bench, who was the tough guy at the time on Milwaukee. And it was like as soon as I saw him, it was not even fear because at that point, like you don't even have time. I just said like, all right, well, this is what he wanted, so let's go. So shed the mitts and obviously lost a fight, but the respect, two things. One, the respect I got right away as a first year player to go and actually drop what Grant is. It goes a long way with teammates, and I'm not gonna promote fighting. I'm just saying the hitting and the
No, great point. I want like nobody here is promoting
no,
fighting.
we're not talking
Yeah,
about like, hey, you have to go do this. It was more I wanted to be involved, and he's doing his job at the time, which was to protect players like Cal, whether it was to go have a
sure.
conversation or for me to, And so that happens. And I just remember sitting in the penalty box and him kind of smirking across the ice, knowing that that was for him basically. But hey, it got me going. It got me confidence to play hard, hit, be in the game. And then after that, it was more about, okay, now can I back that off a little bit and focus more on, actually not playing as I was playing, but kind of doing what I do, which was being an offensive player. And again, we talk about accountability and trust. Year after that, I played first power play with guys like Corey Locke and had a breakout year. Went to the All Star game, scored 18 goals in the American League on D, and it kind of propelled my career. And I'll always remember that the same guy who was on me every day, it was on me every day, it was on me, was the guy who asked the Minnesota Wild if he could call me to say that I got my first call up. So I mean, that was kind of full circle for me. Didn't even come from the GM. It was Kevin who made the call and said, like, hey, you're going to play in
That's
Calgary
cool.
tomorrow. So as hard as he was on me, I think he did it for the right reasons as well.
Where were you when you got that call?
Of course, I was on a day off shooting pucks in Houston. I remember with actually
Where do you go shoot pucks in Houston on a day off? Like,
Troy Ward was there on the ice with
no
us. We
way.
were 4 or 5 guys, and he's like, "Hey, Kevin wants to talk to you." I don't even think he was at the rink, and gave me a call. And yeah, to be honest, like I couldn't even tell you what phone I had at that time, right? Like almost 20 years ago. But he definitely had an impact, and for to have a coach like that who cared that much, and kept you accountable. Again, the word comes back, but he did keep you accountable. He didn't care who you were. Like he'd get on Corey Locke or some of our best players in video sessions and call them out because he expected better from them and for the team. So I think players now would probably have a hard time playing for him, but I think it would actually be healthy for them to have a little bit more of that in their environment.
When you look back at those early stages where maybe before you turned pro, it was interesting. I was going back and forth with John Goyens, and again, this was your coach in midget. And one of the insights that he had, he said, I think one of the things that Max benefited from is that early on he played for coaches where if he made a mistake or players made a mistake, it wasn't that mindset that I think is probably still prevalent in some places in junior hockey and in other leagues as well. But the player makes a mistake, the way you correct it is you bench him, and that's how you're going to teach him. You're going to bench him, and then you're going to expect that they're going to learn. He said he had the benefit of playing for coaches that maybe when he made a mistake, they put him back out there, and his sort of feeling was, and I'm paraphrasing here, was that maybe help maybe accelerate not just your play but also your confidence in yourself. Any truth to that?
Yeah, I believe that a lot. Like another quote I like to use a lot with the players, especially in my sessions when we're expecting sometimes a lot of mistakes because it's new stuff, new techniques, whether we're working on mechanics. So to John's point and to yours, I wrote down a quote that I used to read sometimes before games from Theodore Roosevelt, and it was, "The only man who never makes a mistake is the man who does nothing." Right? If you're just gonna
Yeah,
um,
so true.
and not try to build a business and not try to do anything, yeah, you probably won't fail, but deep down, you're kind of failing yourself anyways because you're not going out and trying to improve or trying to do what you want. And that was kind of my mentality. And I try to talk a lot. I use that a lot on the ice with the players. Like, hey, don't be afraid. Make a mistake. Now's the time. Hey, and it's not to put myself up against the head coach or stuff like that, but I'll say like, hey, coach is in here. Like, this is my ice time. This is our time to make mistakes so that when you go back, you're better for him, for the etc. Right? We have to disassociate sometimes because they're expecting me to what, go in the office and say, oh, he was horrible today. He's making terrible passes. And yeah, there'll be times if it's really bad or it's a bad attitude or something, for sure we have to like correct these things as a staff because we want the team to get better. But at the end, when we're doing like, let's say, just strictly development work, I tell guys like, you do it the way I ask and you make mistakes. You don't do it the way you're used to and do it perfect. That'll get me more mad because
Yeah,
you're just going back to bad habits or a routine. Or we'll do shooting clinics and people, parents are paying for us to help them develop a shot at 15 years old, which by now they're already like really good shooters. And then guys are just going in and doing the whole thing. It's like, why are you even coming on the ice and paying this money? Like, just go shoot in your garage if you don't want to like work on
yeah.
these things. So we're trying to encourage that not so much the mistakes, but the trying and mistakes are going to be inevitable at that point. But I believe in that too. That when I was, and yeah, for sure, like you said, I had coaches. There were times in my career where I sat and and even when I was older, like when I was after 30, when you're supposed to be mature, I was getting sat sometimes. But it's part of the game, and knowing to like how much to push is also a skill the players need to develop.
Well, like I said, I think there's a benefit to, you learn a lot from coaching kids, and I'll use, like, I think I mentioned off the top, like I coach my little guys U9 team, and so this is where we got to, there's positions, and we don't put defensemen and forwards. Like, the kids play everything, but we're learning it's like nobody can skate backwards, really. So we got to spend a lot of time skating backwards, and of course, none of them like skating backwards because they're not good at it. And so we talk a lot about, hey guys, you know how you get better at skating backwards? And they're like, how? And they're like, I think they're expecting like a secret. It's like, you got to skate backwards. And I think that same simplicity applies to all parts. Like, you can't develop players if you don't let them get their reps in and let them try and let them, get in the fight. Like, nobody learns from sitting on the bench. And again, I think that just shows maybe a bit of the evolution of coaching and just how we develop players. I want to go back to Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes. So, this isn't meant to be like a hot take, but I don't think it's too out of line. Like, not too long ago, there's a world where those two kids, like, they're not first round picks. Like, there's a world not too long ago where you could argue that Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes might be like, sort of, teams might have taken a flyer on them in like kind of rounds, I don't know, 5, 6, 7. And just because of their size. So the game has really changed. And again, I think just going back and forth with some of your coaches, another kind of universal bit of feedback was like, man, oh man, if Max plays today, like, Max is a full-time NHLer. They're like, unfortunately, we can't control time, but his timing might have been a little bit off. When you look at defensemen today and how much it's changed and how the game has changed, and maybe, I think it's fair to say the defensemen have more of an impact overall in the game, perhaps, than they did.
I'm
Um, you
biased,
know,
so I'd have to agree with you. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I think you just, I mean, I don't know this for a fact. Maybe you do. Like, I bet you if you look at the amount of time the defensemen have the puck on their stick in a game, an NHL game today versus 20 years ago, I would imagine it's a huge discrepancy
yeah, and I mean,
between the
when
two.
you talk to any like high end pro player, he's going to tell you, "Oh, I love this team. Like we had great D's. Like they got me the puck."
Totally.
But then at the end, like who's really doing that? Who's facilitating this neutral zone entry? Probably coming from the back end. It's very rare. It's going to be like a stick lift on a back check, and then it's like a turn right away back to a 3-on-2. A lot of times their pucks are getting dumped in. It's very methodical, and D's got to go back, take hits, make plays. One thing for the D's now that is pretty cool to see, especially with like the Schaefers of the world and everyone coming in, is just because you're 6'3" or you're 5'9" or 10, like you don't really get put in a certain mold and say like you have to play a certain way. Look at Victor early on in his career, people saying he was soft or he needed to like bring more grit. I mean, it's we're talking 15 years later, he hasn't added that much more to his game, yet he's still up for the Norris most years he's playing and he's healthy. So being able to do that. So now even the you have these coaches or parents like, hey, he's a big kid, like he's got to play hard. Yeah, he has to for sure have that in his game, maybe a little bit more than a smaller guy would, but his job is still to facilitate breakouts, make little plays, create 2-on-1s on the rush, create an odd man. And an odd man can be literally just making it a 4-on-3 up the ice. For me, that's a great play. You're creating a situation that's an advantage for us coming through the neutral zone. Well, just because you're 6'3" and you're used to being told like you got to rim the puck or make like simple plays, we got to get rid of that mindset because you will be expected to make that pocket pass and take it even at your size. You will be expected to make that play. So don't like put them in a mold where, okay, well, this is how he's going to play. Because when we do D sessions, I don't even care how big or small the guys are. We're all doing the same when it comes to breakouts because it's expected of you that that's the right play. It's not like, oh, well, this guy's not a great first pass, but man, can he hit and cross check? Like there isn't much of that anymore or any. So even the big guys now on the back end need to realize that. Same thing for the forwards. There isn't much anymore of the we're dumping pucks and just hitting guys, and it's like that's your fourth line role. Like, go find guys like that in the NHL now, if that's where you want to play, because you won't find many of them.
Do you think that, as the game has evolved and for all the reasons you just listed, that that's put more pressure on coaches? And what I mean by that is that the coach who says, chip it out or just go off the glass or their default is make a simple play. Like they're just, they in no way are setting their players up for success. Like if you can't give players tools to solve problems on the ice, you're really not of much service.
No, you're not helping, and you're not helping your team either, because you're basically just giving the puck away a lot, and there's a time for it. Like, I've been actually clipping now just for fun some of the most elite defensemen in the NHL, like flipping pucks up off the glass, but in a smart way. Like, they're putting into areas where like their forwards can like into it. It's not an icing, it's not a turnover. But if you rewind the clip, that really was the only smart play he had. If anything else would have been way too high risk, even with his status. We'll take Makar, or like even now everyone's talking about Schaefer, but there's tons of clips of him where he knows he got put in a funnel by the forecheck. He's got nothing. He's up against the wall. He's looking. He's got no middle options. Well, can you teach now? Well, now you got to cut your losses, but there's another play after. Is can you make that a
Yeah,
can you make it die at the top of the circles at the others, or can you put pressure on the other Ds, because now they got guys coming with speed? Or when are you rimming it? Are you rimming it too late that your forwards got to slow down to be on side, or are you rimming it too early that they even had time to get up the ice? So now the D
sure.
easy pick up D to D back up to you. There's components you can teach in the skill, but that's not where we're starting at, especially now with the young kids. We're starting, we talked about earlier, scanning, taking information, making little, like even simple passes. I watched one of your last podcasts with the Calgary Flames head coach. I'm drawing
Ryan Huska, yeah.
yeah,
Ryan Huska.
talking about passing, and I see it every day. I see it every day. Elite players that haven't played a collective hockey enough, a lot of individual skill based, and then they're messing up like really simple activation flow drills off passing. It's like, why aren't you guys getting? We have to stop drills. Why aren't you guys getting shots? Is it your understanding of the drill? No. Is it because you can't skate or you don't have the skill? No. So what is it? Oh, passing, guys. I mean, you're supposed to be like the best U15 players in the area. You're telling me we're messing up a flow drill because we can't make 10-foot passes. So that is where we're at now. Is everyone's got to be able to pass. Everyone's got to be able to make plays. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. And this is basic development.
Well, I'd be curious. Did you, when you were with Minnesota's organization, did you cross paths with Jared Spurgeon at all?
Yeah, took my job.
Yeah. He took your job. Oh, shit. Jared,
Nah,
what were you doing?
he deserved it.
No.
He played great for us, and he got called up, and he ran with it. And now look at him now. He was gonna make it no matter what, but it was kind of my time to make it, and he came in and did it. But like, what a career he's put together, and so it was always such a good teammate.
Well, I think that, very, very similar, at least on papers, undrafted. And I bring him up years ago, I coached in Trail in the BCHL. And so Spokane was about a 2-hour drive south for us. So we had a day off on a weekend. We'd go watch him, and he was the captain down there. And, at the time you're like, you had such an appreciation for his game and what he was able to do. But you're also like, this kid's like, at that time has no chance, right? Like he's just too small. And then we do a lot of work in Minnesota now. So a couple times a year I'll catch a game, and I'm just like, the moral of the story is this. It's like having a variety of tools to give a player, because the tools that you get that are going to serve you might be a lot different than other players. But I think it's a really good example that as coaches, our job isn't to, I mean, anybody can look at a player and find the reasons they can't. The job of a coach is to say, hey, what are the tools that I could give this player so that they can, and I can maybe help a deficit so that their strengths can shine in a way that's going to enable them to, to kick that door open at the next level.
Yeah, and it's definitely not an easy conversation sometimes with parents or players if they're younger, or even the older guys, because yeah, you're kind of pointing out deficiencies or things that we can work on, but then we're giving them all the tools and saying, yeah, but you are so good at all this other stuff. If we can just help you add this to your toolbox, imagine where you can bring it. And even talking about a guy like Spurgeon, there's many defensemen in the NHL. If you look at it, does he have the hardest shot? No. Is he the fastest skater? No. Is he the toughest, roughest, like open ice? No. Hitting guys? No. So what's he really good at? Really simple stuff. He's really good at really like getting pucks through, getting them 2 feet off the ice for tips, like finding
Yeah.
shooting lanes, um, cutting his
Great
lock,
stick.
great stick on the rush, like all these little things, all these fundamentals that we want to skip over. And then you
Yeah.
realize, well, this guy's making 7 million or whatever he is. You guys don't want to do that, or, are we above that, like teaching that? And that's, I believe we have to really get back to that is kind of making all the fundamentals so elite. And then now the kids are so creative. They watch every goal. Like they're going to be creative using these fundamentals. Like, but what we're trying to do sometimes is like teach too much of those kind of individual creative skills versus like letting them develop that, but then having their toolbox there so that when they have to defend or they need to protect the puck for that split second, they can do it. Like, look at Jack Hughes, a lot of his assists, he has a guy on his back, he's punch turning, but then he gets creative and he's like saucer passing through the box, but to get to that point, he had a Heiskanen or a Slavin on him with a stick and a body and a bump, like, so, yeah, you just see the finished product or what we choose to see, but
Yeah.
let's wind the tape and let's coach that as well.
100%. Maxime, I think you and I are like-minded, both rink rats, and I think it's easy. Comparison's funny, right? Like, I mean, I look at you and I'm like, oh man, I myself, I know so many people would have given anything to have your career, and I'm sure when you're in your shoes, you look at somebody else and say, gosh, I would have had their career. But I think just maybe a joint appreciation for, like, if you're getting up in the morning and you get to go to the rink, whatever you're doing there, like that's a good gig to have. Um, I heard you say something recently that just really stuck with me. And it's funny. Sometimes the universe just puts things in your ear because if it was up to me, like I'd be at the rink with my son and his buddies and our team like all the day. Just because selfishly, I love going to the rink. I love being on the ice and practice. I love teaching. But you had a really interesting comment about when you went to Europe, where a lot of the pro teams in Europe, their players are on the ice like basically year round, where they don't get a break. So obviously, and I think the reference was, you were saying as an import, you get to go home at the end of the season. A lot of the Euro players stay. And that, when you got back for training camp, like 2.5 months later, like you're all geeked up, you're ready to see your teammates, you're energized. And then these guys are like, oh, it's been Groundhog Day for the last 2.5 months. And now we got to go do a camp and do it again. And I bring this up because it was a good reminder for me that, the value in getting away in a game where you can do as much as, the amount that you want to practice hockey or be on the ice is infinite. It seems like today, just the benefit of players getting away from it. But I would also argue, I think there's a real value in coaches finding the space to get away from it as well. And whether that's recharge, refresh, but I'd just be curious if you can maybe lend your, maybe share your lens on that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the environment change, if we're gonna go back to like the European comment, I think it's huge. I think that came from maybe were they a little bit behind in training in the summer and how they were developing players, but now they have really good trainers everywhere that do like private skates in the summer for the pros and juniors, like everyone. And let's be honest, like 99.9% of the players are coming in top shape to camp. Like no one's showing up and just kind of getting through it and hoping they make the team. So there isn't that factor anymore where we have to control what the players are doing in the summer. Maybe give them a guide before they leave. If you're a development coach or a coach, say like, hey, these are things you need to work on this summer with your guy. I can be in contact with him. Like, let's be proactive. We could do Zooms, Teams. Like now you can do whatever in our world compared to what you could 20 years ago. And I
Totally.
and I think it's the same for coaches as well. Like I had struggled with that, to be honest, my first year, where like every free moment I'm like going on Instat or like watching clips, and I'm trying to do it and realizing like it was kind of getting unhealthy, where putting so much pressure on myself to deliver as a coach new stuff, when again we go back, I'm here a year and a half later still teaching puck protection, scanning. So being able to now say, okay, I have a lot of the knowledge and clips that I need. I need to get away from the game. And then, like, I just went on a vacation for 5 days with my family and went on the ice this morning at 6:45 for our pre kind of breakfast lap, like breakfast club preschool skate. And practice is at 6:45. I'm out there 6:38. I'm shooting by myself because I want to get on the ice before the kids and just like feel the ice again. Well, I wouldn't have had that probably if I didn't have that love of the game early on or got pushed into it or pressured into it or whatever. I thank my parents a lot because I'm as diehard now as I was when I was 15, 16, and probably even more because I'm spending most of my day talking, watching, coaching hockey. And now it's different because I'm doing it for the other players that are, on the ice with me, trying to give back. And yeah, you could say, well, you post on social media. Yeah, but I don't get paid for any of that. I do it because it's free content and I want people to see new things. And I get tons of messages from coaches or posting on the coaches site now and just things like that where I'm doing it because I want players to get better and there's avenues that coaches can learn from to get better themselves as coaches. Sometimes half the battle is helping the coach better because they spend more
Yeah.
with the kids than you do. Actually.
Yeah, no, like 100%. And I think that, and I was looking on like for example, your company's website. I was surprised. Like you have a lot of, I don't know if you term them assistant coaches with your program. It would appear some of them are still playing, and I'm assuming that means that they're coming back in the summertime. But when you're prepping those players that are kind of probably in the shoes that you were in not too long ago, like, are you focusing on, hey, you're going to do this drill and they're going to go do X, Y, and Z in the drill? Or is it like, hey, here's how you're going to relate to the players? Like, how do you prepare those players to sort of become good coaches? Is it the X's and O's, or is it maybe some of what, get termed the soft skills?
Oh, I think part of it is the emotional side also. The
Yeah.
connection is huge for me. It was in my career, having good coaches, bad coaches, taking from the best. Um, take a guy like Rickard that you were talking about, Gronberg. He was a coach that was very methodical. He's big into a lot of like military stuff. He talked to us a lot about like post action reviews and going over what we did and how we could get better and execute that. So I learned a lot from him as well, like at 30 something years old. And but also for me, a lot of the thing is these players want to be so elite now, like they want to be so good right away all the time, and trying to explain to them that whether you're 11, 15, 20 years old, there's going to be a process. It's never going to end. Like for me, it hasn't ended yet. Like I'm retired and it's still like, I'm getting judged by how well I can coach or how well I can do. Like I haven't stopped, the process. So it's like, why do you think that at 15, after this year in April, you'll be done? Or, it'll be enough. Like, that's going to be enough. Like, if I do 8 months of this and I make this team, then it'll be good. I'll be good to go. It's never going to end. So the big thing for us with the coaches, I have some that played or are playing right now and they skate with me as players. So it's good because they hear me talk. They see my drills. They know what I'm asking. So it's easier to put those guys on the ice and coach because they already know kind of what we're asking. And then for other coaches like Neil Blunden, he never played pro. So when I went to McGill University, and he's really proactive. But it's all about the connection. And a guy like him, it's about the passion. I call him on a day off. Hey, what are you up to? He's at the Habs practice, taking notes and watching drills.
Love it. Yeah.
These are the types of people that we want around to kind of help us grow and develop. And it's not so much about growing the business. It's about like developing these kids and making an impact. And my biggest thing I tell my wife all the time is like, how cool would it be that like I never made it to the NHL as much as I thought I would, or I made it maybe more than other people thought I would, but I thought it would be more just because I believed in myself and how much time I put in. But like that one first kid, from when I started coaching 2 years ago that like finally maybe makes it. Like I'm looking forward to that day. Hopefully it will come if I've done my job well, that kid maybe is playing in the NHL. It's like, hey, I had that kid at 13 years old. And you know what? If he's 21, he's still going to know when he comes to our practices, he'll be doing puck protection. Like all
Yeah.
these things that got him there, they're not going to change. And for me, that's huge for my coaches to create that connection that like you're make mistakes in practice. Like get better here. We're going to correct you, but we're not going to be yelling. And, we get more mad when it's like pucks after whistles or like things like that. We don't get mad for like knocking over cones and like that doesn't phase us. It's about that. And I think the never ending search for like improvement is huge for us in these kids to understand that like that kid next to you is maybe a double B player and you might be triple A, but like in 3 years, we'll see. So it's your job to be elite again in 3 years, because I know he's coming for you because he's here, 3 times a week and he wants it and he's first in line and he's waiting by the door when the Zamboni's out. Like I see it in his eyes. So now it's your job to make sure, because in 3 years, like what if he's the triple A kid and you're the double B kid? It could change very quickly.
Well, I think just because you spent some time around him, and he's become one of my closest friends, Troy Ward. But when we first met, the first time I sat in his office, he was in Abbotsford, and I was just starting out the coach's site, didn't know each other, and just out of the blue, he said, my number one job in this role is, with every interaction I have with a player, is to make sure they leave that conversation with hope. And he goes, if I do that in every interaction I have, then I'm doing my job as a coach. And that's always stuck with me. And I think that just what you just said brought that back.
Oh, that's pretty deep, because I could attest to like feeling that way. I had him with Kevin, which was a huge help because
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
would on D, but he was my D coach for a few years, and he was huge for my career. And I can attest that was his mentality. He always left me thinking like I would make it, or that Kevin was doing it for the right reasons, or hey, tomorrow you'll know this now, you'll be better. So that's huge for sure. I like that saying a lot.
Well, hey, Max, I have my spidey sense, having done this for a little while. I think next time we chat with you, you're going to be wearing a suit, and you're going to be standing behind a bench more than maybe you are in your boots on the ice. I just sense that it'll be tough to keep you away from that. But this has been awesome. For anybody that listens to this, wants to connect with you, wants to follow along, where can they find you?
For sure. Yeah. Now I'm more and more, since my presentation, going to be using platforms that I had no idea about before, like the coach's site, definitely on Instagram. Also, coach's site, I put a lot of the drills out there. Instagram, I have more fun with it, put some different clips and kind of even my own shooting videos so people can see and like learn some different techniques. But other than that, come down to Montreal and come join our skates. But if not, there's free content out there. You just got to be proactive and go find it.
Awesome. Max, we appreciate you, man. You're doing great work out there. Thanks for joining us.
Same to you, man. Great meeting you.